Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gagnon Atelier. I'm your old pal, Tim Gagnon, and this is the Modern Masters Podcast. I'm so excited for you to be here. We have got a great show for you today. I have got to be honest, I am geeking out quite a bit because I've got one of my art heroes with me today. And I know that you are going to be blessed by the conversation that we are about to have. I've got with us Craig Nelson from the Academy of Art University, my alma mater. And so I'm really excited. It's exciting to have people on that can talk about different subjects, but Craig is a huge wealth of information, both as an artist, as an educator, and as he's just going to have so many stories to tell us. And he has been a mentor to many artists over the years. And so I'm excited to have him on. But before we do that, bring him on, let's talk about a couple things. As you can see on the bottom of the screen right there, scrolling across the bottom is our information. If you're watching this on Facebook, I would appreciate it if you were to like this page and also to share this video. That would be great if you're watching it. You can also do what's called a watch party, and that's what I'm going to do right now on Facebook. If you go to Facebook, what you can do is click on the video and you can see the video, and then you just have to hit the share button and hit watch party, which I just did. Now, what a watch party does that is so neat is it's kind of like a super share. What it does is it sends a little message to your entire friend list that says, hey, your old pal Tim is watching this video. You should watch it with him. Click right here. And then you can click there and they can watch it. So it's like a super share. It's kind of exciting. But you may not be watching this on Facebook. You may be watching this on YouTube. So if you are on the Gagnon Atelier YouTube channel, I'm going to ask you to hit that subscribe button and also to hit the bell notification so that you can get all these cool videos, because we've got some amazing artists that are going to be coming on here in the future. I got to tell you guys, it's called the Modern Masters Podcast, and we have been so just blessed to have actual master artists. We're not just bringing on anybody. We're bringing on the best of the best and talking to them and hanging out with them, and they can share their stories with you. So with that said, I am going to bring on our guest today, Mr. Craig Nelson. Thank you for joining us, sir. I am really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Tim. It's going to be fun. I'm interested too. I've done a couple of these, but this is the first one I've done in with video attached. So this really.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if I cleaned up enough, but.
Yeah, well, we can't tell. I mean, if you get close, maybe it looks like I shaved.
I'll stay like that.
That's funny. So tell us a little bit about yourself, because you've been just at the Academy of Art University for what now, 30 years?
Yeah, I'm going on 31 now. Who would have thought?
Goes by fast. It goes by fast.
Incredible. My kids grew up while I was there. So.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, because most of your kids are about that age.
Yeah, they're all in their 30s. So. Right.
And I remember seeing when I was attending the pictures, the paintings that you would show of your kids when they were young, and how you would have them pose, and they and they didn't like it. And I want to say that your kids posed for some of the artwork that we did in class.
Oh, really? Yeah. They did. My son, I think all three of them did actually. They posed for some of the photos that we used for some of the online courses.
Yep, the reference photos. Yeah. And that's how I went to AAU. I went online, and it was really good. I'm excited to talk to you about that here in a few minutes about that. Online education and how things have changed and all of that. But you started out your career doing commercial art.
Yep.
So tell us about that, because you've done a lot of movies that I saw as a kid, And you did a lot of album covers of
Yes.
the music that my wife will totally geek out about because I know she's watching. So tell us a little bit about that real quick.
Well, prior to going to art school, I grew up in the Bay Area in Cupertino, which is headquarters of Apple now. So it was a nice small little town with prune orchards, and now it's, industrial parks and software companies all over the place. Anyway, I left there in about 1966 to go down south to go to school at the Art Center. I didn't even know about the academy then. Academy is very small. Art Center had a huge reputation, and I was very concerned because it was expensive at the time. Compared to now, it was cheap as can be, but at the time, it was considered very expensive. And I was very concerned about whether I was going to be able to make a living as an artist. And one of my aunts who worked for Zellerback Paper said to me, oh, if you're going to be an artist, you want to be a commercial artist. They make money. Okay, so I went to Art Center. I was kind of a dual major, illustration, and took tremendous amount of painting classes, painting and drawing. And there was the linkage was very similar. It was not two radically different majors. So I graduated. I had a lot of portraits in my portfolio, a lot of primarily figurative type of art. Was living in Los Angeles and kind of went around everywhere to see if I can find some freelance work because no one told us how to make a living as a painter.
Right.
So I literally kind of went door to door, and eventually I ended up at some of the recording companies, one of which was MGM Records. And I left some, at the time we're talking old school. I left color Polaroids behind. Polaroids, a lot of people don't know what those are. Those are instant photos that you can get. Anyway, I left those behind and got a call about a month later, come in, and he pulled one out, painting I had done of the athlete Bill Russell. And he says, "Did you do this?" And I said, "Yep." He says, "Got a job for you." So he gave me a Sammy Davis Jr. album cover.
Oh,
a big one. Did it, liked it, turned around and gave me one after another. During that time, he said, "You ought to go contact Uni Records and all these." So I went over, and Uni Records was a affiliate of Universal. So I went over there, showed my portfolio, and the art director for the record company said, "Hang on for a second," ran out of the room, brought another guy back who was the art director for the motion picture. And he said, "Wow," he says, "have you ever thought about doing movie posters?" And I said, "Yep."
Yeah,
So he said he gave me a bunch of other names and turned around and gave me a couple of projects. One of the names was art director at Warner Brothers. Boom, he gave me a big John Wayne movie. The first one he was killed in, called The Cowboys. And then I did some work on Dirty Harry. That was kind of my introduction. I was like 23, 22.
Oh, wow.
And because when I graduated, I was about 23 or 24, come to think of it. And this big stuff was coming my way, and I was just jazzed. At the time, I didn't even care about. They were paying me more than I could imagine.
Right.
Which now is a pittance compared to what they pay. But back then, and so I kind of came out. A friend of mine used this. He says, "You came out of the chute fast," and I did. I had a lot of work. Stayed very, very busy doing mainly commercial work. All the time I was painting on my own, doing painting on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept that up, and around 1976, or was it 74? 74, my alma mater, Art Center, asked me if I want to come back and teach a painting class and a model, a figurative class. And I said, I'd love to, because I hadn't worked from a model. I'd been working from reference, photographing models, things like that. So went back, started teaching in 1974. Since 74 to now, I've never taken a semester off. I've taught.
Really? Wow.
One or two classes generally is what I've taught. And then I wanted to leave LA. I figured I didn't want to live my whole life there. So we ended up looking around. We decided we wanted to move north. I mean, we looked all over the Southwest. And we decided we wanted to move north about that time, I got a phone call from the Academy. And they said, hey, would you like to come up and reform our fine art department? I said, maybe. I said, I'm looking up there. So they flew me up. I looked around. It was all bizarre, conceptual, not skill-based art. In fact, one of the pieces I saw, a faculty show, I walked in and there was a toilet seat with a big piece of wood behind it and nails in the toilet seat and nails in the wood, and they had strings attached. And that was the piece of art. And that's kind of what they were doing at the time. And the president of the school at the time, Richard Stevens, was a kind of a visionary. And he said, we don't want this stuff anymore. We want to go back to the way my dad learned. And so I set out to kind of reform and restructure the fine art department. I did it with a cohort of mine, Bill Mon. He eventually went over and took over some the master's illustration department. But we built it from that. And, so I took over the department, taught 2 classes, and really around 88, prior to that, is when I really started pursuing painting as a career. I weaned off my illustration, and it was not because there wasn't work. There was a ton of work at the time. I didn't see the writing on the wall. I didn't see that computers were coming in and all this stuff. I never saw that.
Right.
For me, I just had gotten tired of it. I got tired of ridiculous deadlines, working till 3 and 4 in the morning, getting a call on Friday to have a piece done on Monday. And I wanted to see how good I could be as an artist. And I felt like illustration, I was always doing someone else's project. So that's kind of what led me to what I do now. And I paint and I teach.
Now, how long of a transition plan did you have? Because, it's tough to walk away from good money, especially when you've got kids and a wife and a mortgage and everything else. And then you're making really good money over here as an artist. And so it's like there's a lot of artists out there that would be envious of your position. And then saying, but I want to walk away and go into this area of art. That's a scary thing to do. That takes some guts and stuff. And you have to make a plan. How long was it? Was it a quick transition? Was it a slow transition? Did you just jump into the deep end of the pool?
About 5 years. No, believe me, my income took a drop. We went through a few months where I was going, oh my God, because I didn't have a huge savings.
Right.
There's no family money. It was basically, that's how I paid my mortgage. That's how I did everything. So we went through a drop, and it slowly worked its way back. Got into one gallery. First gallery I was in, I didn't sell a thing. I saw one piece in a year.
Oh, wow.
But I was still doing a little bit of work and teaching. I learned from watching my father not have a plan. And when he was laid off in his 50s, he basically had to do anything. He had to do custodial work. He had to do 10 bars. So I always figured I was going to never be in that position. I would diversify as much of my income as I could. So I taught. I did workshops. I did illustration. And then I began my painting. And as the painting started picking up, I accepted less and less illustration work. And
that's a really great idea. And I think it's really important for artists, especially, you've got to have a diversity of income streams.
Yep.
And so if you're teaching, and then you have your fine art, and then you have, maybe you do some commercial art, or there's got to be multiple streams. And the biggest thing is that, especially nowadays, a lot of, I have some friends who they get the bulk of their art sales via social media. But if they put all their eggs in that one basket, it could be bad, because Facebook could go the way of MySpace. We all had MySpace pages many years ago, and that doesn't even exist anymore, I don't think. And so things can dry up like that. But when you spread it out, it's not so, you've got a plan, and it's not going to kill you if one of them goes away. You've still got those multiple streams of income. A business mentor of mine always said that no one customer should have more than 20% of your income.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and basically what his point was is that if a particular customer or income stream, if you're an artist, so you may have an Etsy store, you may have Facebook sales, you may have galleries, you may have teaching income, you may have other sources. But if any one of those reaches over 20%, they own you.
Yeah.
And so but if they go away and they're less than 20%, it's not going to kill you either. So it was just wise advice that I've always kind of logged away.
Well, I've been really careful at the academy because every time I've said, well, I think I'm going to retire, they have said, no, we don't want you to. What do you need? How much? So I've always been, but they've been really good to me. And I always have stressed the fact that I am not a teacher. I am an artist who teaches.
Right.
I'm not a teacher that does some artwork. I'm an artist, and I've kept that concept. I stress it to students. It's what I do. I don't know if that I could stop if I wanted to. It's just something I've done now for, God, since 70. What's that? 50 years. So I've done that and keep doing it. My goal, but said, well, when are you going to retire? I said, from what? And
yeah, last.
I probably am going to go another couple of years. But painting, I said, I will quit when I'm 93. You can write that down. And I'll put my brush down and relax. Facetiously, I said that because one of my heroes, Bert Silverman, is beyond that.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's painting up a storm. So
he still is. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I watch online and I see you're so active right now. It's incredible how you're just working away and cranking that out and doing great things with your art. And it's like, you're not slowing down even a little bit. If anything, you're going faster. I'm
not sure about going faster, but I started these Friday demonstrations that I started that about when we were first put into what I guess they called a lockdown, kind of where everyone is kind of the stay at home thing. And so started teaching virtual, and Anna and I said, she had streamed me before when I was doing workshops. I said, why don't we start doing that on Fridays, where every Friday I'll take an hour and a half and do something. And so I'm still doing it. Week 17 now.
I'll tell you what, they're a blast to watch. I watch them every day, and I'm working on my stuff, and I got my phone set up, and I'm watching you paint away, and they're really, it's just fun to watch, and for me, it goes back to, I remember when I first started going to AAU, the first video that we had to download, the first class that we had to take was on cleaning our brushes.
Yeah.
And there was a video of you taking brushes that were so beat up and so damaged, and you showed us how to clean them in a way that would bring them back to life. And to this day, I was like, that's the video. Doesn't matter what other videos I saw you teach. That's the one.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. I forgot about that until you just brought that up.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still the mandatory. You must watch this video first before you do anything else. But it might be, but it was a great video. And I was like, you can do that to brushes, and it was like, because in my career back then, I was doing performance art. And so I was traveling all over the country doing the speed painting.
Oh, yeah.
With the big giant paintings and painting really fast. And my shtick, because you got to do something that separates you from the pack. My shtick was, while I was painting these giant paintings in under like 2 minutes, my paintbrushes were on fire. I would light them on fire, and I would breathe fire in there. So I was painting really fast with these giant flaming paintbrushes. So my paintbrushes would get just completely annihilated and destroyed and all that. And so to see what you could do and bring a brush back, I was like, where's this been all my life? I need this information.
Well, I tell everybody that I'm a brushaholic, and I'm looking around the studio, I probably have about 200 brushes here. I only use probably 10 or 12 of them pretty much, but if I need them, I have these others, and I just love brushes.
That's funny. You remind me of my dad. He has probably 300-400 fishing poles. He'll never use all the stuff he's got.
Yeah, same concept.
But he's got it. If he needs it, it's there.
Yep.
You know, so that's the thing. And brushes are something about art supplies. They're just the most.
Oh, it's seductive. It's very, very.
They are.
I used to go to the art store here once a week, and now they've reopened. I can actually go, and I'm dangerous in there with my credit card because one of those. What's this? I haven't tried that color. You know, pretty soon you're.
Right. Yeah, you can get in trouble. It's a quick way to get in trouble with the wife. Of course, your wife's an artist too, so you two in there together can be really dangerous.
No, she doesn't. I buy her stuff. She's very frugal when it comes to that kind of stuff. So.
One of us always has to be the frugal one.
Oh, when it comes to art stuff, she's the one. But because I bought her a couple of plein air type easels that we, you know, when we travel, and I didn't need that. I said, your old one's getting kind of beat up. This is a good one. So
there you go. That's amazing. So let's talk about you went to the academy. And my experience at the Academy of Art University was online, but it didn't start out that way, obviously, because the college is how old?
1929 is when they started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hadn't heard of it. Truthfully, it had been so small. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I heard of it when I was teaching, and I saw a couple of guys come through to show me their portfolios they were illustrators at the time. And I said, boy, that's pretty good. And so that's the first time I heard of it. Unbeknownst to me, one of the vice presidents of Art Center, who had been a teacher of mine, Midge Quinnell, had been a roommate of a lady called Barbara Bradley, who was very instrumental in setting up the program at the Academy. That's how they found me. I haven't.
Oh, wow.
They said, well, we've known about you for a few years. And I went, okay, how? And I found out in the long run, it was the contacts of these two individuals. And so that's pretty much how it happened. It's, you know, I mean, I wasn't really well known as a painter when they brought me up here. I was a guy that could paint, but I wasn't well known as a painter because I hadn't promoted myself that way. I had been working about 2 years as a fine artist. I had been doing fine art for 20 years, but I had been so when I came up there, I knew what I wanted as far as to set up an education, an art education. I had been on a curriculum committee at the Art Center down in Southern California, and I was asked by the head of the committee if I would write up and give a proposal on what I thought an ideal curriculum would be. So what I did is I went home and I said, what would I want my kids to take? If my kids were going to go, and that's the way I looked at it. And so that's pretty much my concept and the way I set it up. It's basically, and you've been through it, Tim, so you know this, it's basically traditional. Basically classical traditional. But and that's how we started. And as we grew, I started branching off, and I brought in, and I said, I want to bring in abstract painting, but it's got to be good abstract, not the kind of stuff where you just free form it, well-founded in good understanding of skills,
right?
Color, design, ideas, all that stuff combined. So we slowly branched out. We got into some surrealism. We got into some abstraction. We got into mixed mediums, and obviously plein air that started, landscape, cityscape. So we developed the courses as we felt there was a need. And we're not a conceptual school in general. I mean, so if you really want to do far out conceptual stuff, you probably shouldn't come to the Academy. You should go find a school that does that. You can't be everything. I learned that. But our things are all based on building good solid skills.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that drew me to the school, is that it felt like I was getting an atelier style education, but I was also getting a degree, an accredited degree. And that's what really made me go, this is the school for me. I knew I wanted to eventually teach at the college level. That was a goal of mine. So an accreditation is a must. You know, I had to have that. So it was like, I want to go to an accredited degree program, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I get, because I had heard, in the researching, and my gosh, every artist that I come on and talk to, they'll talk about their college experience. And a lot of your representational artists, they don't speak highly of their college education in their art programs at all. And they, in a lot of ways, were discouraged for pursuing realism.
Yeah.
And so they were very disgruntled with their education. And I always found it interesting talking to them. I'm like, I didn't have that experience at the academy, because again, it was like I felt in a lot of ways I was going to an atelier school, but I had the extra benefit of the degree. It was just phenomenal for me. So
I've been asked recently on some people that have watched my demos on Friday. They said, give me, if you had limited funds and you really want to become a better artist, would you advise going to college, taking workshops, all these things? And I said, and you kind of already just nailed it. Go to college if you want that degree for whatever purpose. I don't know. That's personal. The purpose could be for teaching. The purpose could be for something else. Go to college, but careful of the college you pick. But if you have funds and you're looking to just improve and become a better artist, take workshops. However, be careful of where the workshop you take, because there are many workshops that don't necessarily teach. And I said, your workshops basically are 5 days, 3 days, 5 days, sometimes longer, 10 days. I do one 14, but you're only going to get so much out of that. I remember as a student, my very first week of school, I had a teacher named Don Putman, just inspirational, exceptional. And he sat down and did a demo. And I went, wow, I had never painted, I had drawn. I could draw pretty well. I just assumed I'd be able to paint pretty well. I couldn't.
Surprise.
Mine looked like. So for a good 2 years, I struggled as a painter, not as a drawer, but as a painter. And the point that I'm making is you can watch somebody do it and go, got it, know what I need to do. Doing it is something else. You need that practice. You just have that repetition.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the improvement comes, the repetition.
Right. And the other side of that is that now that I've been teaching art for a couple of years now, it's like there are some tremendous artists that are just lousy teachers. They're not good instructors, and then there are great instructors that may not have the skill of the other one. And sometimes, but to find that artist that can be both, that's a godsend right there. I mean, that really makes a difference, to be able to really truly instruct and be able to explain this skill set and how you can take someone and they can figure it out and do it themselves. That's a rare trait, in finding an instructor that can do that. So
that's what I was trying to explain to this individual. It's also true in just taking a workshop. It's a workshop. You're still spending money.
Oh, yes.
And you're investing. I've always said this I've talked to other department directors. I said this about, you got to remember, these students, it's not only money and time, because that's a given. They're investing time, they're investing money. But there's something that a lot of times you forget, and I call it hopes and dreams. I've been fortunate. I've made my living as an artist since 1970. Those hopes and dreams are something, don't take those lightly, because that is what we're dealing with, along with the investment of time and energy and effort. We're really trying to help these guys go out and fulfill their hopes and dreams. And that's one of the things, as a teacher, you shouldn't go into teaching. I'll tell you what, if you're going into teaching specifically for the money, most
bad idea.
Do it for the money's important because you have to have that to live. We all know that. But you do it for other reasons. And people ask me, what are the other reasons? Because you're in essence creating your own competition. So it's kind of altruistic. It's like, I've been fortunate. I had really wonderful instructors that I still refer to. Don Putman, Joe Henniger, Reynold Brown. Did Ben-Hur, did the posters for Ben-Hur, Reynold Brown, Mitch Quinnell, Paul Souza. All these guys have been very instrumental in who I am today, I think, as a person and as an artist. That, if I can help continue that, those guys aren't with us anymore. If I can help continue that, there's something that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And you probably experience the same thing. Along with, I don't want to diminish the fact that I'm a painter, because that's my main thing, is I paint. But if I'm going to be an educator and a painter, I don't want to be a pretty good painter and a half-assed educator. I want to be really as good as I can with both.
Right. And that's the thing. It's, it's what I call a maestro's heart. You have that master artist that is there with the sheer goal of raising up the next generation.
Yep.
And training them, and and it goes back to the old atelier, what that comes from, the apprenticeships. You're taking these young artists and you're literally raising them back in those days, but raising them up to take over and get on your shoulders and go even further.
Absolutely.
And that takes a certain personality, I think, and those teachers that can really do that and have that heart are the most successful instructors, because I think the students feed off of that energy and they get excited about it, and they know that this instructor isn't holding anything back. I've been around other instructors, and you take a workshop and you can tell they're holding back their really good stuff. And they think they've got some secret knowledge, and they're acting like, they're so pretentious in their ways. And then you're sitting there going, like I had this one guy I was trying to figure out, like he had this clear gel stuff, and I hadn't known enough about acrylic yet to know what it was. And I asked him what it was, and he was like this with it. And he told me that it was this special stuff that he could only get in Italy and blah, blah, blah. I found it at Hobby Lobby. And I was like, you stinker. I'm like, he lied to me, and it was just hilarious that he was so worried that I was going to take his secret idea, which all it was literally acrylic gel medium. That's all it was. And he thought I was going to take that deep, dark secret and run with, and steal his ideas. And it was hilarious looking back on it. But some artists are like that. They're like this with their stuff, as opposed to being a maestro's heart, which is like, here's everything I've got. Take it and run.
Well, it's very true. It's like interesting. Yesterday in my wildlife class that I'm teaching strictly in the summer for the academy, the first half an hour, we talked about how you can go about making a living as a person that might paint animals. And you have to think that you're educating people for all the different avenues, and you're not educating them to be the next, Bert Silverman, as I mentioned, or the next, Robert Bateman, a great wildlife artist. Some of the people are going to find their avenues in what we would call little lower echelons. I mean, I have ex-students that do dog portraits, that do horse portraits. Then I have ex-students that do incredible gallery type, $15,000 paintings. So you kind of have to talk to the group about the whole gamut, because everyone's going to find their avenue.
Find their niche.
Yeah. And everyone's not going to be great. Some people are just going to be good, which is fine. If that's, I always tell students, I truly believe this, and I usually say it at workshops more than I do in class. I have a firm belief that, I'm not talking about just me, but that we as instructors, a good instructor can teach anybody to be a good painter. A good painter. Maybe not a great portrait artist, but a good painter, just a good painter. I don't believe we can teach anybody to be great. I think that's something that's inside us, and it's something that you just pursue for the passion. And
Right.
but we can get anyone up to it, because people, I can't paint. I can never paint. I said, wait a minute. You can. You may not paint at the level of a great artist, of a Michelangelo or somebody. You may not ever reach that, but we can get you up to a point where you can actually produce work that you feel good about. And when you get the exceptional individual, you can push them beyond.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I always use, I went to school with Shana Levinson. We were going together.
Yeah, I know. Shana and David.
In classes. And Shana likes to post her, like when she first started at the school, self-portraits, and then she puts her latest self-portraits right next to each other. And I like to, and I always told her, I steal them and I make a slide and I put it on my full screen in all my classes in the beginning. And I put the quote, and I can't remember the name of the person. It was a famous basketball coach. And he said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
John Wooden.
Yes. And so that quote just resonates with me. But when you see, Shana's stuff next to each other, you can see that when she started, her skill level was here, and now it's, it's through the roof. But it's like, just what you're saying is you can get somebody to a certain point with instruction, but then it's up to them. What are they going to do with the skills that they've learned? And that's where passion comes in. That's where, drive comes in, and hard work. And, there were students in class when we started that they were skill-wise further ahead than a lot of the class. And then as we went on, they started to get eclipsed by certain students. And then I remember a bunch of them dropping out. And it's like, well, where'd you go? And they literally got discouraged because it was really their worth ethic that wasn't there compared to other students that may not, the other students were here in skill level compared to them, but their hard work, they learned the skills, but then they just kept going and going and going. It's a lot about drive.
I use two words, persistence and perseverance.
Yes.
It's two words. And if you have that, you're going to keep improving. It's one of these things that, again, going back to my education, an instructor of mine always said, and I love this line he gave me. At the time, it resonated and I understood it, but not to the full extent that I understand it now. And that is, your mind will always stay 5 years ahead of your ability.
Oh, yes.
You're striving to get to this level, and you're at this level. And all of a sudden you reach it, but by the time you reach that level, you've realized other things, and you're thinking here, and then you're constantly climbing after that you're chasing the carrot, so to speak.
Yeah, it's an unachievable goal. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, what do they say? Doctors practice medicine. They'll never master it. Artists are the same way. We're practicing. We're never going to get, I don't know if there's ever been an artist who's ever artist in the history of artists that has been able to have their painting or their sculpture or whatever it is they're trying to create look like what they thought it was going to look like up in here.
It can always be better. This is one of the things about critiquing work.
Yes.
I can critique, if I'm going to critique somebody who's just, say, a novice getting going, I'm going to critique it from the point of view of the big problems. I'm not going to get nitpicky, because it's senseless to get little tiny things when there's a bigger problem. So, but if someone's great, someone's really good, and they want, a critique, I try and divorce opinion from fact.
Right.
This is my opinion. It's not necessarily necessary. There are facts that are necessary. Perspective is a fact that's necessary, right?
Right.
Anatomy, it's necessary, unless you're going to do something where you're totally distorting. But then it better appear intentional. It better not appear like a mistake.
Right.
And so these are the kind of things. There are factual things, and then there are things that become more subjective. And so I always try and separate those two. And if someone wants a subjective criticism, I'll tell them, this bothers me. However, it's not bad. It bothers me. It doesn't mean it's going to bother the rest of the world.
Right. Critiques, you're bringing this up. Critiques are things that absolutely terrify so many, what I call a young artist, someone that's new to doing art. Critiques terrify people. I grew to love the critiques. And one of the things that I really loved about the critiques that I got from AAU, because I was doing the online program, they were videos.
Yeah.
And we would download them. And so I have thumb drives with all my critiques. Every critique I've ever had is on a thumb drive in that closet right there, in a box. I've got thumb drives from every class, every critique I've ever had. I can pull any one of them out and watch it. And I just loved the detail in them. And it got to the point where it's like I crave critiques because they're so informative, they're so helpful, they're so insightful, and it's like, before I was terrified of them. The first time I ever got a critique, it was, I had gotten out of the military and I was breaking into the comic book industry. And I had my art hero at the time, Mark Bagley, who drew Spider-Man. He still draws Spider-Man. He'd been drawing Spider-Man since I was probably 10. And I tracked him down, called him on the phone. This was when I got an Atlanta phone book, this thick, the white pages. And I totally stalked the guy, found him and called him up and asked him to critique my work. And he agreed to it. And he called me up about 2 weeks later and he critiqued me in the most brutal, vicious, it was just crushing critique. Everything he said was 100% correct. But that critique completely changed my life. Completely changed my life and the direction of my career, everything. Was he kind about it? No. The critiques at AAU were super professional, always kind, really good. But this guy it was a different scenario. He was in a different world. He was critiquing me from a professional industry, and I remember he had a catchphrase. He would say, on this page, what were you thinking? Oh yeah, you weren't. But then he gave me all of this great advice and all these things. I remember I was so crushed and wounded that he just destroyed me for 45 minutes. And then I had like a Timmy over here and a Timmy over here talking to me. And one was like, oh, he was a jerk. He was mean. He was this and that. And then the other one went, he draws Spider-Man. They don't let anybody draw Spider-Man. Maybe you should listen. I was probably 25 and I took his advice, some of the best advice I could have ever taken. So glad I did. But critiques are so powerful. And that's one of the things that you get when you're in an instructional environment like that I think was probably, looking back on my education at AAU, that was one of the highlights.
That's good. Because there are people that can't handle critiques and that complain like crazy. Oh, the teacher doesn't like me. We hear that. I hear that from other instructors. And it's like you have to temper in the situation that we're in, because we're in a college or a university, you have to temper your critique with an intelligent way of presenting it so that you don't alienate the student. Yes. You can ruin a person. I mean, if you were fortunate that you were strong enough to take that, because some people just hang it up. Hell with it. I'm just going to go. I got a guy at school right now that's an elderly student who said, am I ever going to be really good? And I went, and he's pretty good now. I said, yeah, you just got to keep working. I mean, frustration is one of the biggest killers for painters. And it's probably for musicians, for a lot of people, just getting frustrated. And the frustration could come from you're not where you want to be, or the frustration could be that you're not getting recognized by galleries or shows. You have to have enough guts, and you hear about all these overnight successes in entertainment that are not overnight successes. They've been struggling. Same with authors.
Yes.
It's like, it's called persistence and perseverance. You go back to that. And if you got the passion inside you, it's going to work its way out. I can't say it'll happen in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It will happen. You just got to keep slugging away at it.
Right.
And that's one of the hardest things. The heart of an artist can be very fragile.
Oh, yes.
And your ego is wrapped up into it.
Yeah.
But having gone through illustration, believe me, you have to kind of let that part go because you're doing it for clients.
Oh yeah, when you work commercial art, you got to throw I think it's probably one of the best things that happened to me is I worked for 30 years in the advertising industry doing commercial art, and it was like you can't get attached to your artwork because the customer will change it, and they never change it in a good way. They always make it worse. Always.
It's a great training ground for me. I figured I didn't look at it at the time like this. In retrospect, I was being paid to learn.
Yeah.
So I learned and I kept my skills up. My skills got better and better and better because I was building on the foundation that I got initially, and I just kept going. The only difference is in the commercial world, I didn't have the opportunity to find myself, my own voice, as the saying goes.
Right.
It's what I knew was missing that I wanted to pursue. And so that's why that was the big reason for me switching over. Along with, I had two friends that were having a degree of success at the time. And every time we'd get together, I remember going to a American Impressionist show at UCLA. Mm-hmm. And I saw all these incredible paintings that I had never seen before. I didn't even know who the hell the artists were. Well, I went with a fellow teacher who was a friend of mine named John Osaro. John does, I think he's the best living colorist today myself. But John, we went out to Numero Uno Pizza after the show and sat down, and John was talking to me about these paintings he was going to go back and work on. I had a film poster on my board that I had to get back on and have done in the next day and a half. And it just was kind of crushing to know that he could use this inspiration that he had just seen. And because great paintings inspire the hell out of me. I had a friend who gets very depressed. He sees great paintings. Oh, I can never do that. I get the other. I get energized. I go,
right.
I go do that. I want to go do that.
Nice. Right.
But I couldn't do it at the time because I had to go back and work on it.
You had to go to work. Yeah.
It was a big turning point for me. This was probably around 1982, 83, somewhere in that range. And it was a big turning point. So,
it's funny how, our artists are so different, but it's all about your attitude sometimes. It's all about, how am I going to handle this situation? I mean, I've been in the military. I've been chewed out by every drill sergeant, every this, every that. Getting a critique or getting, I don't stay down long because it's like, okay, move on, let's grow, But my attitude has always been as an artist, if I'm the best artist in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And you need to quickly find a room where you're the least skilled artist. That's the only way you're going to grow. That's the only way you're going to get that camaraderie. And I really believe that relationships are the highest form of currency. And so when you can get around other artists that will inspire you and be that iron that sharpens iron, that makes you better when you're around them and inspires you. I want to be around artists that make me look at their artwork and say to myself, Tim, you got to step up your game. What are they doing that you're not? Let's figure this out. Let's grow. And I want to be around people like that. Not everybody can handle that, and it's a shame. But I think it's a mentality shift that we have to make. And if we can make that, we can experience some real growth in that. I remember when I look at my artwork before my experience at the Academy, and I look at it now, and it's night and day. And I know that a lot of my instructors are a big part of that. One of my favorite stories that I tell about my time at the academy was Professor Almadova.
Jennifer.
Yes, I was convinced I was failing the class. Absolutely convinced it was the color theory class.
Yeah, that's a hard class.
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. And I mean, we were painting thousands of swatches, and I would cut them out in the gouache, and I'd lay them on the bed, because that was the biggest thing I had, was that we had a king size bed. I'd lay them out, and I'd look at them, and you'd have to pick the 9 that were the perfect blend for your chart. And then you'd have to cut them out in perfect squares and line them up with a T-square. And if they were just a little off, she'd be like, nope, you got to do it again. And you'd get your row, and she'd be like, number 3 is too dark. And you'd be like, number 3 is too. So I had Ziploc bags with all the cutouts. Thousands, and I had them numbered, and I'm like, okay, so these are the ones I picked. Now I got to figure out, this. And I was convinced I was like, she's so nitpicky, I'm never going to pass this class. And at the end, we had to mail in the portfolio.
Sure. Yes,
and
you don't do that anymore.
She sent it back, and I it's one of my most cherished items from my time at the academy. She sent it back, and there's got to be at least 50 sticky notes, little tiny sticky notes. And she would write these hand notes and stick them on there. And then she'd write another one, stick it on there. And then, like, some pages have like 5 sticky notes to say what she wanted to say. She wrote the sweetest, most kindest personal notes. And I'm sure she did that to all the students.
Yeah, she does.
But I was like, I passed. It was amazing, but I was convinced I was failing that class. That was a tough class. But during that time, I taught paint parties. And that's when paint parties were all the rage. The sipping thing where the ladies come and they paint the things. You're on the stage with a canvas, and they've got a blank canvas, and they got their wine, and they're painting and all this. And you take them step by step, stroke by stroke, and they go home with the painting, and they think they're great. But most of the time, they're either very tipsy or totally smash drunk.
Yeah.
And so they're not listening. So when you say, take a little bit of the turquoise and mix it with a little bit of the red, and you're going to make this color, and they're not listening. So they make this horribly wrong color. And I would walk up, and they'd be like, Tim, what did I do? I said, well, you obviously weren't listening. That's what you did. And then, but from that class, I'd be able to go, put some red in it, or put some blue in it, or put some yellow in it. And they'd be like, that's not going to work. I'm like, trust me, do it. Boom, fix the color. They would think I was a genius. Thank you, Professor Almadova.
That class is a tried and true course. I helped write the syllabus for that course. And based on course that I took when I was at Art Center, it was a killer course. And I asked the teacher, when I started teaching there, I became friends with some of the teachers that I had. We went to dinner one night, a guy named George Paris, and I said to him, how did you come up with the methodology in teaching that color and design class? And he had a pipe, and he says, military. Military. He says, you do this first, this second, this third, this, and you do it in a very regimented fashion. And, he obviously knew a lot about color on top of it, but it was the same kind of thing. And it was that incredible discipline to be able to go through that. And it was I revert back to things that I learned 50 years ago when it comes to perspective, things that I learned. And when it comes to other things, I literally go back and I hear those voices. And I've had people say that about me. A good friend of mine who works at Pixar said, every now and then, he says, I hear your voice. And I went, and it really, it's funny and it's touching.
Right.
My goal has never been to be an instructor, ever. It happened. I wanted to be an artist. And so now I'm an artist. That's why I keep saying I'm an artist that teaches. But most of my energy and time when I'm away from the teaching is literally pursuing my art and still deciding on who the hell I am as an artist. I'm still going through that. I'm at the point, people ask me now, I'm at the point where the kind of art that I am interested in doing, it switches every now and then, but it's where energy meets control. It's got both aspects, and it's not, for a long time, it was an illustration, it was pure control. Control, how refined, and I've been through that. I like that, I enjoy that, but now it's how much energy can I get into it and still maintain the control.
Right.
So when people see a painting and they're across the room, they go, wow, it looks beautiful. And as they get close, they feel the artist's hand. They feel the artist's hand. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So that could change.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I've got some of your artwork right here. Let's show some of it off, and we can talk about that because it's glorious. If you guys haven't seen this, you're in for a treat here. This one here, the Lonely Gondola. I love this one. You do a lot of plein air studies.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about this one right here.
Around 2008, we started developing these European workshops, and we still do them. Obviously, we didn't go this summer. We were supposed to be there about a week ago. And a lot of it has been revolving places in Italy. Venice, I've been asked, Venice is probably my favorite place to paint plein air. So I do a lot of smaller, like 12 by 16, 11 by 14, sometimes 9 by 12 paintings, plein air stuff while I'm there. Take a lot of pictures, and I come home, and the good plein air stuff I literally frame and give them to galleries. But they also inspire me to do larger, more thoughtful paintings where I can put more time into it. And that's what this was. This was a place in Venice that we used to, I painted one time. I painted it here a couple times. But the thing of it is we used to sit outside at the end of the day and have an Aperol spritz looking at this view. Mm. So it's got kind of a duality for me. It has a reminder of that, and it also has a reminder of me painting on location.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty. Your plein air stuff is absolutely, and you have a ton. I'm going to full screen you so people can see some of your artwork behind you too. Your plein air work is just tremendous. And you were actually interviewed. I watched it yesterday, the plein air podcast.
Oh yeah, by Eric Rhodes, sure.
Yeah, and that was a great interview that you had there, talking about the plein air studies that you do in your classes, and it's just the looseness of your brush strokes. I'm sorry.
Of all the art that I do, it's the most fun. It is pure recreation for me. It is, honestly, I hope the paintings come out good, but if they don't, I've still had fun and I've learned something. And what I've learned over the year, I knew nothing about plein air. I kind of taught myself. I got into it because like I said, I was a figurative artist. And what happened is I got into it through just trying it. I used to do this figurative workshop every year in Carmel, Monterey. And the last day we'd go out on location. We'd take the models out on location, and I started painting outside. And I found this is just a kick. And after that, I started working more on my own outside. And it's just, now I teach it. I teach workshops in it. I'm doing one at the end of, actually, even with this COVID, because in plein air, you can paint outside and you don't have to be surrounded by a lot of people. I'm doing one up near Lake Tahoe here, up in the Squaw Valley area. And it's because we can do outside and keep social distancing, and just, it's wonderful. It's enjoyable. Hopefully you do good art. If you don't, you learn something.
That's right. You're right. Plein air is, when I discovered plein air just really about 10 years ago. And it's that's like, to me, it's like a day at the spa.
Yep.
You just go and relax and unwind. And of course, here in Florida, it gets pretty brutal hot. So plein air season is usually spring and fall and winter. You know, it actually gets pretty cold in this section of Florida. But you know, for the most part, though, spring and fall, we've got it. The only place that I go in the summer to plein air paint is a place called Morrison Springs, which is a freshwater spring here in Florida. And the water is freezing cold. And it's this beautiful, cypress tree swamp. And it's actually where we have like the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies were filmed in this area.
Oh, wow.
In these areas, a place called Wakulla Springs, right down the road. And the original Tarzan movies were also filmed there.
Wow.
And so, but you can plein air paint these. You be in a kayak and you anchor them and you paint. You'd be right in front of this cypress tree, just climbing out of the water. But if you get too hot, you just jump in and then you climb back out. So you're painting, take a break, jump in the water, come back out, paint some more. But that's the only place I'll plein air paint in the summertime because it's too hot. But it is so much fun to do. It's hard to explain unless you've done plein air. You can't really explain the joy.
We started these workshops in Italy for that reason, because we started in Italy and then we've gone to France and Holland and Austria. But we started in Italy and we keep going back there. The people, they're generally a little older, although we've had some 20-year-olds. Actually, we had a 20-year-old. We've had, but generally they tend to be a little bit more mature. And some of them are exceptional. I mean, Brian Blood's come with me before. You know, we've had a really good Lee McLeod is a great painter. Suzanne Darcy. These guys are really already accomplished painters, and I don't know why they come. And they come because of the camaraderie, the practice, the fact that we kind of take care of everything, and then everybody craves a critique, and it's kind of a critique with wine. So.
You're sounding like a paint party now.
After we painted, we sit down. Usually after the first week, we sit down, and then I'll say, "Show me your best two," and then we go through the thing, and it's kind of a complimentary thing. And then things that they might look at for the next week that they might be able to improve upon. But it's such fun, and to be in a different culture, and you come home with a piece, not a snapshot. You come home with a piece that you actually painted, right? Standing for 1 to 2 hours in that one spot, painting on location. It's really, you know, it's wonderful. And then living here in Northern California, I mean, we're really blessed because pretty much all year long you can go out and plein air paint. You know, I mean, pretty much all year long here you can paint. You know, if it's raining. It's interesting. I was just speaking with a friend of mine that lives up in Redding, where it gets really hot. And during this, I'm looking at buying a motorhome, and he had just bought one. He calls it his studio on wheels. And he said he was just up in Oregon painting, and he said if it's nice, he just pops the awning out, paints. But he said sometimes if it's really windy or something, he'll sit inside and paint. And so I thought, and I was thinking, it's bizarre. I was thinking of getting a used motorhome partly for that reason, and partly because we can't fly anywhere, or we really don't. My wife doesn't want to, so. And a lot of bathrooms are closed, and we thought, let's get something where we have a contained bathroom.
Get an RV, yeah.
So we're looking into the possibility of doing that partly. And ex-student of mine who's a painter in Arkansas, Barry Thomas, goes all over. He came out and took a workshop with me, and he pulls up, and it was an indoor figurative workshop, but he pulls up in this huge motorhome, and he says he takes it all over, and he opens the back, and he's got all his paintings in there, canvas. So I thought, that's a great idea.
Yeah, Cesar Santos is doing that right now, where he's traveling all over. He's doing the van life, where they have converted vans, and he's traveling all over America, and he's just parking it, does some plein air painting. His wife edits his YouTube videos for their channel, and then they go somewhere else and they paint and they plein air paint, and that's all he's doing is plein air painting and visiting and traveling around the country. It sounds like just awesome fun.
It's like I said, it is. I mean, I love studio paint. The difference between plein air and studio, if I do a lot of plein air, then I want to get back into the studio and do a real refined finished painting.
Right.
And if I do too much of that, then I want to go out. And so it's like you got to balance. For me, I shouldn't say you have to, but for me, I have to balance those two. I have to find the time that I can kind of be in my studio and carry the painting. And I talk about it's plein air or quicker paintings are done and you don't have as much evaluation time.
Right.
The studio painting, you've got all the evaluation. And I keep telling people, I said, I paint like I don't change the way I paint. The difference is if I'm in the studio, I have more time to evaluate. I can sit back and analyze. Where if I'm out plein air, I basically have got a maximum of about 2 hours before the light changes. And one of the things that I've done, though, is I started something, everyone and their brother was doing plein air workshops. And I'm always looking for something that I can make a little bit my own. So about 3 years ago, I started, instead of just doing, I was doing these plein air workshops in Sonoma County where I live. About 3 years ago, I decided to start what I went out and did a few on my own, large scale plein air.
Oh, wow.
And I give the supplies.
Really?
I give, not the paints, but I give an 18 by 24 glass palette, 2 brushes, a palette knife, and the substrate, and up to 30 by 40s. And we do 4 paintings in 5 days. But here's what we do. We go out, we paint in the morning, the first 2 days, same location. You do a morning and you do an afternoon. Then you go back and you finish the morning and you finish the afternoon. Then we up the scale and we go 3 days in a row. And we do a morning painting. So you have a morning, you have 3 stages to go through. If you're painting 2 to 3 hours, let's say 2.5, then basically you're painting 7.5 hours on a paint. I mean, you're not going to get like a 20 or 30 hour studio painting but you could come up with some really wonderful results. Going large with a larger brush teaches people how to use that brush more effectively.
Yeah, crush those brush strokes.
But it also allows you the opportunity to go back the next day, but it's trying to teach everybody how to get a good lay-in and then build on that lay-in. And it's been pretty well attended. So I'm doing it this year up in Squaw Valley. I'm going to do it up, and we're going to do it along the Truckee River and paint up there. So
that's amazing.
The people that are taking it so far are really good. I mean, Kathleen Dunphy, who's is taking. She was an ex-student also. I've got a lot of these ex-students that have gone. They found their focus and they've gone beyond where I'm at because my focus is kind of everywhere. I still paint figures. I paint landscapes. I paint European scenes, architectural cityscapes. So I'm kind of all over. It's a little bit hard for some of my galleries to promote me because I don't have I'm not the guy that paints waterfalls.
Right.
You know, or the guy that paints like Monet's known for his lily pads, right? But he painted figures, he painted other things, but he's known for that.
Right.
And I'm not known for any one thing. I paint a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It keeps me interested. It may be hard for the galleries, but it keeps me interested. It keeps me excited.
To me, it's like it keeps you from getting bored too. I couldn't do it. I mean, I have my niche that I paint, and that's my studio work. But that's why I love to go plein air painting, because it's so different than what I normally paint in my studio work. That's my way to just stretch and I use the James Gurney little book, the little watercolor.
James is a student of mine.
I know, it's pretty amazing. I heard that.
Really, he only came to class and he dropped out. He didn't have any money, so his wife, at the time his girlfriend, but his wife now took the class, and she'd go home and he'd pop in. And so about 3 years ago, I was at a portrait convention, and I hadn't seen him in 30, 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And yet I'd known of his success. And so I walked up, I was walking up, and he goes, "Craig, oh my God." I went, he recognized me. I would not have recognized him. He had a full head of hair, and now he's, but great artist. Another perfect example of someone who has the passion, the perseverance. He just keeps going. He's a great example of that.
Yeah, he is.
And also a great person.
Oh yeah, he's an amazing artist. He's one of the ones that I've followed for a long time. Of course, I'm a big dinosaur fanatic, so his Dinotopia books had a big influence on me, obviously. But yeah, his plein air stuff and the way he handles it, I like the idea of having that little book that it's almost like it's a catalog of my adventures.
Yeah. And
then I can finish it and put it on my coffee table, and I can pick it up. It's like a photo album, but it's all paintings.
That's it. Exactly.
So it's really a lot of fun to have those books that you can just set down and it's your memory. So some people, they go around with a camera, but I've got my little plein air kit, and all my adventures are collected in this little art book. But let's real quick, I want to go back and I want to talk to you about AAU a bit some more.
Sure.
In particular about where you think education is going. Obviously, I went online, 100% got my master's degree online. For me, because I had a young family, I lived on the Central Time. I lived not on the East Coast, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, but I wasn't able to go to San Francisco to take the class. And I had researched, if I'm going to do this online, I was really worried about a lot of things. And because of my military background, there were a lot of people that were, say, going to like Phoenix University to get their degrees. And a lot of military contractors, they would not hire people because they didn't recognize certain degrees. They were like, "Oh, that's not a real degree. You didn't go to a real college." And so I researched heavily. I didn't want to go to just any art school. And where was I going to find the right school that had a legitimate degree that also was going to give me the training that I had? And a lot of schools have online programs, but their online programs are at best. And so the education that I received online, a lot of people are like, how can you get a painting degree? How can you learn art online and it'd be a good quality education? The instructors aren't there. And I tell everybody, AAU's online program is world class. It really is. And we had video instructions. And what I loved about that is I could go back and watch them again and again and again and again. So if I wasn't getting something, if I was watching the teacher doing a demo and I go back home or I'm doing my homework, I don't remember everything. But with these videos, I can watch them over and over and over and over again. And I remember many nights watching the videos as I'm doing the homework, painting and doing the projects. And then the critiques were absolutely amazing. And probably the best critique I got was I was in a class for it was trying to remember the class, Joe Weatherly, who is an animal artist, and it was creature design.
Right.
And he would take the reference pictures and he would take your paintings and your drawings and overlay them. So you could instantly see in Photoshop and like do transparency. Yeah. I could see instantly what are screwed up proportions and anatomy and this and that. And it was like, oh, so the critiques were, again, we talked about before, I've got all my critiques over there. I can watch them again and again and again. So you had these world-class artists that were teaching, do the instructions. You had all these other artists that, are friends of mine to this day. And then we had the video lessons as well as the video critiques. To me, couldn't ask for a better education. That was like super cutting edge. And that was I graduated 2015. And so, but where do you see education in college level art? Where do you see it going in, say, in the next 10 years And I know that you're doing it now with live online.
Yeah. Well, when you say college level art, there's so many.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird word.
If we're talking painting or sculpture or something, but it's painting, since that's what you do and I do. You took the online. Well, that online's been going for close to 20 years now.
Mm.
And when they first started it, I was not on board. Let's put it that way. Wow. Until for the foundation department, they asked me to do a video. And I went and did a video and saw it and I went, this will work. And I told the head of the online, who was setting up the online program, and the president, I said, yeah, we'll do it, but I only want to do it if it's great. I don't just mean good. And so my concept coincided with theirs. And I brought everybody, all our instructors on board. And I said, here's the deal, you guys. And you nailed it already. You just said it. Great video demonstration. So by one of our faculty will do that video. If you're taking an on-site class, if you came to San Francisco and took an on-site class, there are advantages. The advantages are, number one, if you're working with a model, the model's right there in front of you. That's an advantage. To me, that's not as big of an advantage as I can go up and take your brush and show you how to make marks.
Right.
I do a demo, you get to sit and watch it, but you can't take it home. In other words, you can watch these demonstrations as many times as you want, and you did exactly what my wife, who is kind of the head of that area, she teaches still life. She suggests to all her students, watch it once, and then play it while you're working. And even if you don't watch it, listen. And between that, we still can't take your brush. We can, and do things. But that has become a real godsend in terms of, and we are constantly improving it. The AAU's been really good about letting us update things. So if we need to change some things in our class, we'll do a rebuild. We'll have new videos made. So the problem is they have 23 departments.
Wow.
And so to kind of keep all the departments, and some of the departments are huge. The game design is the big department right now.
Oh yes, I can imagine.
And but all the game design guys come over and take fine art painting classes, and because the other departments all realize the relevance and importance of learning this kind of stuff. So animation, illustration, all these guys come over. So when you talk about the future, the two forms that we just started this during this lockdown, this what we call virtual, which is Zoom, and that is synchronous. In other words, if you sign up for a class like in the summer, I meet with my class 2 times a week, on a Monday and a Thursday, and you're on for the full class time. You're on Zoom, and yesterday I've got about 15 students in there. I was able to look at their work 3 different times. Once in the morning, once kind of in the middle of the day, and once right about an hour before we ended, about a half an hour before we ended. So I was able to give input, and it's worked really well. And what it's enabled is people, if we had been doing this when you were in school, you could have actually signed up for this, because it doesn't matter where you live, as long as you can deal with the time frame. And people on the East Coast, if we start at 8:30, it's 10:30, 11:30. It's 11:30 for them. So that's not a bad time. And that is working quite well. However, we still have what we refer to as the asynchronous, which is what the online education is.
Right.
By asynchronous, I basically mean it's not in the same time. It's not live. Let's put it that way.
Right. It's not live. Yeah.
So you can tailor make your program to fit your time schedule. If you're working, if you have other obligations, you can make it fit that time. That's the advantage of the online program, which is what you took.
Right. And it definitely was helpful to be able to, sometimes I would be I would be doing my class at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
2 to wake up. I'm in school at night when everybody's asleep.
That's it.
Because that's what you got to do, and so it was just absolutely, for me, online education has become, that's the way to go. And to give you an example, all of my kids were homeschooled.
Uh-huh.
And they went completely virtual school online. It's called Florida Virtual School. And they all went that way. And so they went through elementary, middle school, high school, all online.
Well, I believe we'll always have an on-site presence. I don't just mean we, but I mean on-site presence. And I think there will always be an online component. What they're looking at now is the possibility of even bringing the concept of Zoom and virtual into the online program. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It's almost a hybrid.
Yeah, kind of. That's kind of what they're thinking of, where they're looking at that as being part of it. I know one of the instructors called me yesterday, and they had a private meeting, a Zoom meeting with their student after class. And some of us, we go way beyond the hours we're paid for. Most of the teachers.
Oh,
yeah. And it's because most of the guys are like myself, this kind of people we try and hire that are not only good, but people that really want to. Tamutsu yesterday was one of our teachers told me he was on till 9 o'clock at night, just dealing. And I said, Tamutsu, take it easy, man. I mean, you're overextended. He says, I want them to learn. I went, I love the attitude, but I want to be careful. I also want to protect my teachers so they don't burn out.
Right. You don't want to burn out a teacher. Yeah. And teaching can burn you out if you're not careful.
Yes.
One of the classes that I took that is, I think to me shows the real heart of AAU, is the professional practice class.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I bring this one up is because of what you were talking about, how your teachers are actual artists. They're working artists that also teach, which is the way you described yourself. And they're so passionate about giving to the students, working themselves too much. It's a perfect example. Spending too long, for a job that you should be working 30 hours maybe on, you're working 50 hours on because the passion is there and you want to help the student. And I've been guilty of that. I understand the desire for that, because it's just, I think if you have that teaching heart, that instructor's heart, you can't not do that. I mean, it's in you. But professional practice class, I think, is really interesting because I talk to so many students. A lot of my art students will have MFA degrees. And I can't tell you how many times they're taking my workshops or my classes, and they will say to me, I've got my master's in fine art and nobody ever told me this. It happens all the time. And I'm like, how can you not know this? That was like first year stuff at AAU. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. But they literally, because they had that more traditional art education that is very different than what I had. But professional practice, that's a doozy of a class, and it's a mandatory class.
Yes.
And what I like about it is it's show me how to make a living. How do I actually make a living as an artist? Like, how do you do this? And
I was in school for about my third or fourth year there as the director. I realized this, and there was a gentleman at the time, and he was teaching in the liberal arts department, and we had a long talk about this. His passion was fine art, and I said, we really need to develop something that's like the springboard for students. So they go through, they get all this, and all of a sudden at the end they get this class that is a professional practice, which encompasses a marketing plan, a website. It encompasses all the professional aspects of being an artist. And I said, because truthfully, in my opinion, fine artists need it more than any other major at the school.
Oh, yes.
Because we are the one that you don't go out looking for a given job. If you're going into graphics, you can go to all kinds of graphics firms, design studios, get a job, if you know, and so forth. You can do that with almost all interior design. You can do all this. Fine artists are true entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you have to do. You really do.
And so that's why we really began to develop the class. And we've actually had some students come and take, not the graduate version, but we have an undergraduate version of that class also. And they've come literally strictly just to take that class, artists. And I'm kind of blown away when the first time that happened. And they said, we need this. We need this.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, there are whole books written on this. You know, there's the book, the old classic, "Taking the Leap," which I think was part of the curriculum. You know, but to have an actual class where you have to make these, I had to make a website. I had to make business cards. I had to make mailing cards. I had to make the list of prices of all the different artwork. You know, you had to build a portfolio. You had to make everything you needed to do. And boy, what a difference that makes. It makes you feel like, okay, it's like everything you learned leads to this point, but now you got to go out there and do it. But we're not just going to leave you hanging and, you know, figure it out.
The idea was the day after you graduate, you've got all the tools and you're ready to go looking. You don't have to put together something. It's all done. So that's why I refer to it as a springboard. It is a springboard. And a lot of it came from just what I didn't get. I got great education. I don't mean to belittle it at all, but nothing on how to make a living.
Right.
Nothing on the practical side of it.
And most art programs don't have that aspect. The business side of art is so crucial if you're going to make a living at this.
It's frowned upon by a lot of institutions because that's not what fine art is about. Fine art is about doing your own thing and not worrying whether it ever sells. And
I'm like, you got to eat, dude.
Well, I met her. Anna and I, when we were living in LA, we used to go to this one restaurant all the time. It's a great French restaurant. And I would go in there and have to wait for a table sometimes, and sit at the bar and have a glass of wine or something. And the bar got to know the bartender, really a nice looking young lady, and struck up a conversation. She found out I was an artist. She's an artist. Come to find out, she's an artist. I said, really? But she's a bartender, you know, which is fine. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, she still can be an artist, but she's an artist who's not using art or art-related types of things, and they have to do that. You have to. She had no idea as to how to go about, because we started talking about that stuff. And that resonated with me, and I recall to this. Obviously, we're talking 35 years ago. This has probably occurred, and I realized that. Because I kind of experienced it. I kind of had to go out and find my own way. So if we can help a student, my son went to University of Oregon and was a business major. You know, sports marketing business. He's got a business mind.
Right.
He's got a, you know, I question him sometimes. We question him about certain things. I don't have necessarily a business mind. I'm an art guy who was kind of forced into learning as much as I could so that I could make my art work for me.
Right. And I think that's the thing is, how do you make your art work for you? And when you get that paradigm shift in your thinking, it makes a big difference. You know, the whole starving artist to me is a myth, and it doesn't have to be. No. And it's all about can you get this plan to work? And a lot of my students and different young artists that come up to me, how do you do it? How do we make a living as an artist? It's like, well, you got to make a plan. What's your plan? You know, do you have an LLC? Are you a business? Can people write you a check? How can they buy your artwork? Do you have a place where they can buy their artwork? You know, you got to have a plan. Yeah. And a lot of artists, they're lamenting about how they would love to be a full-time artist and make their living as an artist, but they have no plan to get there. Yeah. And the professional practices class, for me, it really made me think, how am I going to do this? Because I have a very particular way of doing my artwork. And most galleries aren't going to be lining up to have my artwork in it because I do mostly religious art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I modified my plan to go, okay, how can I get my artwork in front of the people that will buy it? How do I get there? And the class forced me to really sit down and make a plan.
Yes.
And then you have to start implementing that plan. And then by the time you finish the class, your plan's ready to go, and you just have to jump in and start doing those things.
Yeah, that's the whole concept of what that class is about. So that, like I said, the day that you're out of school, you don't have to prepare anything. You've done it in that class.
Right.
And pursue what you said you were going to pursue. And truthfully, a lot of students don't. I know a couple of young ladies, and I know another guy that were absolutely fabulous artists. I don't know what they're doing to this day. I don't know if they're pursuing their art. I know one of them isn't. She had kids, and she may get back into it. And raising kids is a whole lot. That's why my wife didn't paint for years, because she was raising our kids while I went out there and stayed with it. She did a little bit here and there, but not as much. But as our kids got older, she got back into it. And so that happens. That's just one of those things. But there are many people that go through college and they either want the degree or they want the training, one or the other. And they like the regiment of a college as opposed to a workshop.
Right.
We have people that like that. I think both work well. It depends upon you, what you're after, and if you're willing to put in the given amount of time to go to college, that's great. But a lot of people, they don't even give a damn about the degree.
Right.
And then you get the other ones who want both. And the reason that we exist at the Academy is, as opposed to just workshop schools, is because it's accredited and you get that degree. And it means it's more difficult for someone like me, who's a director, because we have to jump through certain kinds of hoops.
Big time, yeah.
And you're teaching for college, you understand that. There's certain things that we have to do for accreditation purposes. I don't like to write as much as I have to. I have to write things out of the school. It contacts me. We got to do this. We got to do that. You know what? I learned I could do it. It's not what I enjoy doing. And I get it done. When I get a project that school needs something specific done, I don't procrastinate. I get it done immediately.
Right.
So I can get back to what I am, an artist. I can get back to my art. And like I said, the Academy has been really good to me personally and our department in the fact that we've been successful. And because we've been successful, they really don't, it's not the right word, but they really don't bother me a lot. If I have to do something for accrediting, I do it. But they have a lot of faith, because I've been there for so long. They have a lot of faith in what we're doing. So, like I said, I'm 72 now. I don't want to, and I'll be 73 this month. I don't want to stay longer than 75. I was planned to leave when I was 70.
Oh, yeah.
What happened was the fires here in
right.
Sonoma County, and we had fire. We were out of our house for 7 months, and I said, well, we're going to hang on to our house for a few more years because I want to downsize. We don't need a 3,500 square foot home for 2 people. I want to go smaller house, bigger studio. So studios where I can actually bring models in and do maybe some workshops and just do some practice painting on my own. So that's my goal. Everyone has to have. The other thing, and I told my kids this. Somebody told me this years ago. You might want to pass this on. I believe this isn't just relating to art. It's relating, I think, to life. Everyone needs kind of 3 goals. They need a goal that they can accomplish close to immediately within the year. Then they need a 5-year goal. And then they need kind of a 10 to 15-year goal. This is what I want to be. And I kind of have always done that to a degree. And our year goal usually is our workshops, our trip to Europe. We want to do we want to go to this year. We're going to go to the Dolomites and Venice. So we put that off. Obviously, we're doing it next year. But those are one of our goals. The other goal we might have is to get. I'm starting to do a series of large paintings now. I got one right over here. About how big is that? 36, of singers from the 50s.
Oh wow!
Like pre-rock and roll or the early rock and roll. Like the one I've got going here is Dean Martin, and it's a big. And I'm finding old reference photos and kind of recreating my own compositions. And they're all black and white. I'm working with my own color, but it's one of the goals that I have. I have a goal of I've got these panels, big, tall, long panels. I want to do a series of flowers, not florals, but a flower, almost abstract. I have this Nikolai Fechin image in my head. And so I've got some goals along with just doing my art that I always do. And then I started this Friday. I'm going to do this through the end of August. I don't know if I'll extend it much longer, but these Friday free demonstrations. And I've gotten some criticism from artists. You're giving it away for free, and we're trying to make this.
Go for it. I loved it. That's a mentality thing too. One of my students this last semester called me a sellout artist, and I took it as a badge of honor. Because I'm basically, how dare I sell my artwork? Because you're not supposed to sell your artwork. Giving it away for free is, to me, what you're doing online there. That is part of who you are. You're a mentor to artists. You always have been. And when I see these videos that you're doing and world-class training right there on Facebook and watching you paint, it's like, people pay top dollar for that, but at the same time, it's like the fact that you're basically giving it away for free is such a blessing.
Well, some of it is entertainment. The other part is contact with other artists. And I still do my workshops. I'll still do workshops, and I don't charge a lot for those. I don't try and make a killing on those, but I still do my workshops. And I never want to do more than 3 a year. It's too much. And maybe if I quit teaching, I might do 4 a year. But I want my studio time. I want my time to explore these different goals that I have for myself that I actually want to do, along with getting outside, traveling, and painting. So, it's like, I'll tell you one thing, if you're an artist and you're bored, you're not an artist. Because there's no time to get bored. When I hear people say, "Oh, I'm bored," I went, "Oh my God, I don't even understand that concept."
That's right. I don't either. When I was a kid, my older brother would get in trouble. My mom would get so mad at him, and she'd be like, he'd be like, "I'm bored." And my mother would be like, "Why can't you be like Timmy? He's never bored. Why don't you pick up some paper and draw?" "I don't like to draw." And I'm like, I was never bored.
It's still not.
No, never. Yeah. There's always something to do and always some great things to do. Well, Craig, I really want to thank you for coming on. We've gone over, and I could go all day. This is so much fun. We could talk for days, but I want to just to say thank you for coming on. I definitely want to have you come on again. We got to do this again. This was way too much fun, and there's a million things that I could talk to you about. And there's a few I actually do want to talk to you about in the future. So we'll have to get in touch and discuss some plans for the future on what we can talk about on this show. But I just want to again say thank you for coming on. Stay on the line. I'm going to say my goodbyes to the audience. I'll come back and talk with you a little bit at the end.
Sure. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, fellas, guys, ladies, gentlemen, everything in between. It was the best show ever. Oh my God, I loved it. I told you it was going to be a wealth of information. I mean, his career goes back since before I was born, doing commercial art and movie posters and album covers. And then he gets into education. Craig he has taught some of the, well, not just some, a lot of the top artists in the world today learned from Craig. And it's just an amazing thing. If you are interested in getting your education in art, I cannot recommend, and it's not just because it's my alma mater. You heard us talking about it. Check out the Academy of Art University online. I'm going to put up that real quick here in the banner so you can see academyart.edu. Really, seriously, check it out. You will not regret it. One of the greatest times of my life was my time at AAU. It changed my life. And you might want to look into that and check it out yourself. With that said, guys, next week, we have Andrew Tischler, which is going to be on. He is an artistic YouTube sensation. Hundreds of thousands of people subscribe to his channel on YouTube. He is a world-class, tremendous artist. Quite the cat. You guys are going to love him. He's going to come on and talk to us about anything and everything. Literally, we had a great conversation. So be ready to watch that next week. And then also we have Barbara Hack, who is a friend of mine. She's going to be coming on coming up. And then we also have Eric Johnson from the Academy of Realist Art in Boston. So we've got some great shows coming up here in the future. And just remember, as always, God loves you, and so does your old pal Tim. We'll talk to you next time.